All right, let's get into it. Every great building needs a solid blueprint, right? Well, for the United States, that blueprint is its Constitution. And it's so much more than just some old piece of paper. It's the fundamental operating system for one of the longest lasting republics in the world.
And just how long lasting are we talking? Well, it was written way back in 1787. Now, think about that for a second. That makes it the oldest written national constitution that's still being used today, anywhere on the planet. It's a political design that has somehow managed to survive centuries of unbelievable change.
But here's the thing, this incredible blueprint wasn't the first draft, not even close. It was actually created to fix a massive, massive problem. The first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, was basically just a loose friendship pact between the states. And it was failing. The Constitution was the complete opposite, a radical leap toward a strong, unified central government. So let's talk about that jump, from total failure to a lasting framework. We're going to see why tossing out the old system and starting from scratch wasn't just a good idea. It was something they absolutely had to do if the country was going to survive. I mean, the situation under the Articles was just chaotic. Seriously, try to imagine running a country when you can't even collect taxes to pay for an army or build roads. There was no president to provide any kind of leadership, no national courts to solve arguments between states. It was a complete recipe for disaster. So, in 1787, the heavy hitters of the time, we're talking Washington, Madison, Franklin, they all get together in Philadelphia. And their job was just monumental. They weren't there to just apply a few patches. They were there to engineer a brand new, heavy-duty government from the ground up.
And the absolute core of their new design was this brilliant idea. Let's separate all that government power into three distinct pillars. So let's break down the basic architecture they came up with.
Okay, first up, Article I, the legislature, which you and I know as Congress. Now, in the minds of the founders, this was the big one. This was the most important branch because they figured the part of government most connected to the people should have the most power. And we are talking about some serious power here. Congress controls the country's money through taxes and the budget. It, and only it, can declare war. It regulates all the business that happens between states. The key takeaway is that this branch was designed to be the real engine of the government. Now, let's move on to the second pillar, Article 2, the executive branch. After seeing the leaderless chaos under the old articles, the framers knew the country needed a single person in charge, someone who could make decisive calls. And that, of course, is the president. The president is the commander-in-chief of the entire military. They're the nation's top diplomat on the world stage, and they have a huge check on Congress with the power to veto laws. It was a really delicate balance. They wanted to create strong leadership, but without accidentally creating a king.
And that brings us to the third and final pillar, Article 3, the judiciary. This set up the Supreme Court and the whole federal court system to basically act as the interpreters of the law, the ultimate referees.
Now, the judiciary's power is kind of subtle, but it is immense. It's got this power called judicial review, which means it can actually strike down laws passed by Congress and signed by the president if it decides they're unconstitutional. And to make sure judges can make tough calls without worrying about politics, they're given life tenure. That way, their decisions are based on the law, not on what's popular. Okay, so you've got these three super powerful branches. The next giant question for the framers was, well, how do we stop one of them from getting too greedy and just taking over everything? Their answer was this really ingenious system of safeguards. And that solution is the famous idea of checks and balances. See, it's not just about separating the powers. It's about giving each branch the actual tools to push back against the other two. They basically designed a system that was supposed to have a little bit of tension built in. So here's a simple, classic example of how it all works. Step 1, Congress passes a law. But hold on, the president can say nope and veto it. But even if the president signs it, it's still not over. The Supreme Court can step in later and declare that law unconstitutional, which makes it totally void. It's this constant game of push and pull. But just getting the government structure right wasn't enough. A lot of people were really scared that this powerful new government would just turn around and crush the rights of its own citizens. So they needed one more critical piece for the blueprint, a guarantee of personal freedom. And that guarantee came in 1791. It's called the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And look, these aren't just polite suggestions. They are hard and fast limits on what the government can do, protecting our most basic freedoms like speech, religion, and the right to a fair trial. Now, the framers were brilliant, for sure, but they couldn't see the future. They knew that generations down the road would face challenges they couldn't even dream of. So, very wisely, they built a way to make changes right into the blueprint itself. And that amendment process is how the Constitution has stayed relevant. It's not some document frozen in time. You can actually see these huge waves of change that came in response to the country's biggest crises, from the Bill of Rights to the amendments after the Civil War, and all the way to the expansion of voting rights in the 20th century. And while there have been a lot of important amendments, you could argue that no single change was more profound, more fundamental to what the nation claims to be than the 13th Amendment. The language is just so simple and so powerful. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. With those words, the Constitution was radically rewritten. The same document that had once been used to protect the institution of slavery was now being used to destroy it forever. It's an incredible example of how this blueprint can be transformed. So, after more than 230 years, how is the blueprint holding up? What's the final grade? Let's do a quick little performance review, looking at its biggest wins and its most stubborn challenges. I mean, on the one hand, you can't deny its successes. It has created a remarkably stable and long-lasting government that, for the most part, protects liberty and prevents any one person from getting too much power. But on the flip side, some parts of the original design, like how incredibly hard it is to pass an amendment, the controversial Electoral College, and the fact that every state gets 2 senators, no matter its size, those are still sources of really intense debate today. And really, that's the central question it all comes down to, isn't it? Is this 230-year-old blueprint a timeless guide that still works perfectly fine? Or is it an old foundation that's desperately in need of a major renovation to deal with the world we live in today? That is the debate that the Constitution will probably always inspire.